Hey guys, it's Mr. Wen.
Miss Bell.
Today we're going to talk about finding radius or diameter given area of a circle. So make sure you guys are whisking this in your notebook. We're going to go pretty quick. We're just going to go over 3 or 4 examples. That doesn't mean that you guys can't pause, write down the examples. If you want to, you can definitely, after the first problem, you guys can pause the video and look at the next one, and then pause it, work it out, and then check your work. So what's new? This is something that you should definitely start writing now in your example. Perfect squares is something that we briefly mentioned in class. Today, we're going to talk about the inverse of that. Now, remember in class we talked about inverse relationship or opposite. Adding cancels out subtracting, multiplying doesn't really cancel out dividing, but it creates a 1, so we call that multiplicative inverse. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that later. But here we have, let's jump right, we have a square. It's a square because it has 4 congruent lengths. We have the area is equal to 100 units squared. So that's why it's called the perfect square, because this side and these sides are all identical. So when you find the area, length times width, or in this case, side times side, so mathematically, side times side is equal to 100. It's a perfect square. Today, in order to undo perfect squared, so square s times s is s to the second power equals 100. Mathematically, to undo that, we're going to do something called the square root. Looks like almost like a division house, but not really. So this cancels out that part right there, and all that's left is s. And the square root, basically, we're trying to find 2 numbers that are identical that gives me 100. In this case, 10. So we know that 10 times 10, 10 times 10 is equal to 100. So the square root, again, I'll write it up here. So when you have s squared is equal to 100, we're trying to find 2 identical numbers multiplied together equals 100. Let's try another one real quick. We talked about the first 15 squares in class. So if you have, let's say, 2 side lengths of a square, that is s squared is equal to, let's do 144. Okay. To undo this, you would do the square root on both sides, and you get s is equal to, you can always use the calculator to check your work, because not all numbers are perfect squared, and we'll get more into that later, but here's my square root function right there. The square root of 144 is 12. That's because 12 times 12 times 12 is 144. So 12 times 12 is 144. So that's all you need to know for today's math operation, is how to undo squaring a number or a number multiplied by each other. I'll turn over to Ms. Powell.
Okay, our first example, we're finding the radius given the area of this circle. Now we're always going to start by writing the area formula for a circle. So area equals pi radius squared. Now we know what pi is. We can keep that there. But just like in class, we're going to take this number and we're going to put it right there. And then I'm going to put 3.14 in for pi right there. So I now have 153.86 is equal to 3.14 times your radius squared. Now, we talked about in class how when these two things are next to each other, they're tied by multiplication. So the inverse operation to multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 3.14. And then we can get our calculators out to actually do that. So let's see what this is. So clearing that out, we have 153.86 divided by 3.14, and we get 49. So 49 is equal to r squared. So that goes away. So just like Mr. Wynn was talking about, I'm looking for 2 numbers that are going to multiply together to get 49. So we can type this into our calculator, and we'll get better at this and faster at recognizing these perfect squares. But we'll do 49, do my square root function, and I get 7. So 7 times 7 is 49. That's how they got that. So for this circle, the radius is 7 units, or inches, excuse me. So that's example 1. If you need to pause before I get started on example 2, please do so, and we'll get started with our next example. So same thing, example 2. I always write the formula first, pi radius squared, and then I plug in things that we do know. I know the area already, and I know that this is 3.14. So let's plug things in. 78.54 is equal to pi, so 3.14, 3.14 radius squared. Now, there'll be kind of a pattern that's happening every single time when we're solving for a radius. In the end, though, this question is going to ask me for diameter. I'm not going to worry about that till the very end because I have to find the radius first. So this 3.14 is tied to the r squared by multiplication. So the inverse operation to multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 3.14 on both sides. And then this will go cancel out. So we have, or be 1, so it goes away. 78.54 divided by 3.14, and that gives me 25. So 25 is equal to r squared. So once again, we'll get faster at doing this. I think many of you can recognize this right away. So this is going to mean something times something equals 25. I know that's 5 times 5. So my radius is 5 centimeters. Now this question didn't ask me for radius, so I'm not quite done yet. I know from the center to the edge is 5, so all the way across I would then have to double that, and this is 5. So my diameter all the way is 10 centimeters. So this is my final answer. Cross down. Want to do the last example?
Do it together. Alright, so if you guys look at this one, example 3, this one's kind of a fun one. Very similar to the one we did last week in class. So this is example 3. So this one's asking you to find the circumference, even though they gave me the area. So now we're using one formula to find the other. So I'm going to go ahead and write down both formulas. I see the circumference, I see the area. So I know that circumference is twinkle twinkle little star. Circumference is equal to pi r, and area is fuzzy was a bear, area equals pi r squared. And since this area is given to me over here, just like Ms. Powell said, I'm going to drop that in there. I'm going to go 254 and 47 hundredths is equal to pi r squared. Next, I'm going to take this 3.14, I'm going to put it in for pi, and I get 254.47 is equal to 3.14 times radius squared. And again, this 3.14 is tied to this radius squared by multiplying. You guys should be seeing a pattern now. To undo that, we would divide that side by 3.14, and we're going to do it to the other side. And this goes away, becomes r squared. It just simplifies down to 1 r squared, so you just drop that down. And then we get 254. You get 254 and 47 hundredths divided by 3.14, and that gives me approximately 81. And we're going to square root that to find what r is. So r is approximately 9.
That is teamwork.
Okay, we'll pause real quick and we'll say hi to Mr. Nelson. Hey, Mr. Nelson. So now that we have the radius is 9, we're not finished because we're in need of finding circumference. So we're going to take this radius and we're going to drop it into the circumference formula. So circumference is equal to 2 pi times 9. Okay, so I'm just replacing that r. And this is the critical step right here. I'm going to go ahead and multiply my two numbers together. So I get circumference is equal to 18 pi. Now they're asking you to find exact, you can stop here for circumference. However, we're not telling you to find exact or approximate, so we're going to go ahead and assume that it's approximate. So we're just going circumference is equal to 18 times the approximation of pi. You should know that by now, 3.14, because we use it all over here. And then circumference is approximately 18 times 3.14. And my circumference is approximately 56 and 52 units. And we're not going to square that because it's circumference. So there is a more complex example that you see on the screen using one formula, finding the radius to apply to the other one. Okay. And that's all we have. Anything else?
Have a great night.
All right, you guys can tease Mr. Nelson about that little interrupting us. Have a great day, guys. Make sure you guys are whisking this.
Summary
Yes.
question.
Please watch it more than once, and then we'll go over in class. Thanks, guys.